Imagine you are an anthropology student.
Right.
You're at UCLA, and it is the summer of 1960. You travel down into the blistering heat of the American Southwest.
Oh, that dry, intense heat.
Exactly. And you're expecting to just gather a few dry academic notes on medicinal plants from the local indigenous people.
Mm.
You know, you have your clipboard, your preconceived notions, and your perfectly structured interview questions.
Just completely secure in your objective scientific view of the universe.
Completely. But instead, you sit down with a white-haired Yaqui Indian named Don Juan, who just stares right through your academic posturing. And he pulls you into a terrifying, paradigm-shattering apprenticeship in sorcery.
It's honestly the ultimate collision of worldviews. I mean, you go in looking for standard botanical data, just cataloging leaves and roots.
Yeah.
And you end up questioning the very fabric of human reality.
Which is exactly what we're focusing on today. We're diving into this fascinating stack of sources you sent over. So your personal notes, some brilliant anthropological research papers, and crucial excerpts from Carlos Castaneda's deeply controversial book, The Teachings of Don Juan.
Yes, and I'm really glad we are doing this deep dive because, well, our mission here isn't to just look at some 1960s psychedelic trip report.
Right, not all.
We are analyzing a highly rigorous, pragmatic system of acquiring knowledge that completely and unapologetically defies Western logic.
Defies it completely. But to even begin grasping that system, we really have to look at the man teaching it, right? Because Don Juan was not just some friendly local informant looking to help a grad student with a thesis.
Oh, absolutely not. He was a man deeply feared by his own community. I mean, the locals considered him a brujo josiu, a medicine man or sorcerer.
Right.
And some even whispered that he was a diablero.
Wait, what exactly is a diablero?
Well, in their cultural framework, a diablero isn't just a trickster. It's an evil sorcerer capable of physically transforming into an animal, like a giant coyote, just to wreak havoc.
Wow. Okay, so this is not a guy you want to mess around with.
Exactly. But for Don Juan himself, his core belief, the absolute foundation of his teaching, was that true learning requires experiencing what he called states of non-ordinary reality.
States of non-ordinary reality. I love that phrasing. And you really cannot learn his system from the outside looking in. But he doesn't just hand over the secrets of the universe to anyone who asks.
No, you have to earn it.
Yeah, before Don Juan will teach Castaneda absolutely anything about these plants or his worldview, he gives him a test. And the test is incredibly mundane, yet it completely breaks this student's rigid Western mind.
It's so funny.
It really is. Don Juan tells him to simply find his spot on the porch, his sitio.
Right, a unique place on this tiny 12 by 8 foot dirt porch where Castaneda will naturally feel happy and strong. That's literally the entire instruction.
And then Don Juan just walks away. He leaves him there to figure it out.
He does. And Castaneda's reaction is hilarious, mostly because it is so deeply relatable to anyone raised in a modern educational system.
Yeah, he applies the scientific method. He treats a magical, intuitive prompt like a grid search.
Yes.
He literally rolls around on the hard dirt floor for 6 hours in the middle of the night.
Look at an hour.
I mean, he is lying in different positions,
right,
trying to logically deduce the correct spot by, analyzing minute shifts in his body temperature or looking for little indentations in the ground.
Which is just, he's completely frustrated, feeling like an absolute fool, because he's trying to apply a rigid spreadsheet mindset to an intuitive reality.
A spreadsheet mindset. That's the perfect analogy.
Because a spreadsheet requires pre-existing categories to function.
Right.
Castaneda is trying to sort non-rational data into rational columns.
Right.
And when Don Juan finally comes back out, his critique cuts right to the psychological mechanism at play. He tells Castaneda he failed because he wasn't using his eyes. He wasn't supposed to calculate the spot. He was supposed to see it.
But not with everyday vision, right?
Exactly.
Because when Castaneda finally lets go of his frustration, when he just stops trying to outthink the problem and allows his baseline perception to shift, the visual input actually changes.
The world literally shifts for him.
Yeah, he sees the peripheral colors of the dirt porch transform. The whole area turns a piercing, almost neon yellow-green. He describes it as a brilliant chartreuse.
Right.
And within that glowing space, he discovers his sitio, which is marked by a steady, comforting purple hue.
But he doesn't just find the good spot.
No. He also finds an enemy spot.
Mm-hmm.
And that one is marked by a toxic-looking bluish-green color, like a terrifying verdigris that causes actual physical panic in his nervous system when he gets near it.
And the why behind this exercise is so important. I mean, Don Juan knew exactly where the spot was. He could have pointed to it in 3 seconds.
Right, but giving Castaneda the answer would have been totally useless.
Totally useless. By surviving the intense frustration and, the massive self-doubt, Castaneda is forced to short-circuit his default mode network.
That part of the brain responsible for our rigid everyday ego and logical reasoning.
Exactly. He builds self-reliance. I mean, if you are going to venture into realms that defy physics and logic, relying on someone else to tell you what is real will get you killed. At least psychologically.
Yeah, he had to prove to himself that his own non-ordinary perception was real.
He rewired his baseline perception before any chemical catalyst was ever introduced.
And once that reliance on logic is shattered, his nervous system is finally primed for the actual catalyst, which means he's ready to meet Mescalito.
Mescalito. Yeah, we really need to define that term carefully within Don Juan's framework because it challenges, everything we think we know about psychoactive substances.
How so?
Because mescalito is the power within the peyote plant. But to Don Juan, mescalito is not a chemical tool. He's not an ally you use to get things done.
Right, he's an entity.
A conscious entity, a protector, and a teacher of the proper way to live. And he resides entirely outside of the human mind and takes incredibly unpredictable forms.
Unpredictable barely covers it, because Castaneda's first encounter with Mescalito is just a sensory overload.
Oh, it's intense.
He's in this gloomy room with several Yaqui men. He chews these intensely bitter peyote buttons, and the physiological effects hit him like a freight train.
Yeah.
He describes feeling like he is vomiting liquid words. He loses total control over his normal bodily functions. And eventually, he stumbles outside and fixates on a dog.
But through the lens of non-ordinary reality, it is no longer a canine.
Not even close.
Yeah.
The animal becomes iridescent. It has literal water shooting out of its hairs, forming this silky, glowing mane.
It's beautiful in a way.
Yeah. Castaneda wrestles with it. He drinks out of a muddy puddle with it, barks at it, and runs around the house for hours in a state of supreme ecstatic euphoria. He's experiencing a profound communion with this glowing creature.
He feels he is communicating with an ancient entity, understanding its unspoken wishes, and just sharing a deep, almost cosmic playfulness.
Which sounds incredibly profound until the morning after.
Right, the morning after is rough.
Because the men who are watching him soberly reveal that Castaneda was actually just chasing the host's regular everyday dog.
Yeah.
There was no cosmic ballet. The two of them just ended up running through the dirt and peeing on each other.
To a Westerner, that is the definition of objective absurdity.
Okay, I have to stop right there and push back on Don Juan's logic. Because if I'm reading this, I'm thinking, you didn't meet a deity. You just had a really embarrassing bender in a stranger's yard.
Right.
So why on earth does this make him a chosen man of knowledge?
Castaneda felt the exact same way. I mean, he was mortified. He was ready to pack his bags and head right back to UCLA.
I would be too.
But Don Juan's analysis completely ignores the objective event. To the Yaqui cultural framework, it doesn't matter what the other men saw.
No.
For Castaneda, in that altered state, the entity was mescalito. And here is the crucial mechanism of the omen mescalito. Is universally known in this tradition to be a serious, demanding, and often terrifying teacher.
Yeah.
He tests people brutally. He almost never frolics or plays.
He usually shows up as a monstrous figure just to see if you'll break.
Exactly. So the fact that Mescalito chose to engage in joyful play with Castaneda, even if it looked ridiculous to the sober observers, that was a staggering anomaly.
Oh, wow.
The community requires external validation of worthiness. Mescalito was pointing Castaneda out. He was signaling to Don Juan that this academic outsider was the specific vessel he had been waiting for to pass on his lineage.
Okay, I see. So Mescalito's a teacher who shows you the right way to live.
Right.
But Don Juan is a brujo. He isn't just looking for a peaceful life. He wants to bend reality.
Right.
And to do that, you can't just rely on a teacher. You need powers you can actually control. You need what he calls the allies.
This is a major dividing line in the teachings. Because an ally is a wild power that can be tamed and captured. It carries a sorcerer beyond their own physical boundaries, allowing them to perform acts that defy the laws of nature.
Right.
And Don Juan introduces two specific plant allies, representing drastically different paths of power.
Okay, let's start with the aggressive one. The devil's weed, which we know botanically as datura or Jimson weed.
Datura, yeah.
Don Juan describes it as a female power, conquered exclusively through her roots. and taking it gives immense physical valor. Castaneda tries it and feels this surging, violent energy like he could literally demolish a brick wall with his bare hands.
It's pure force.
Yeah. But surprisingly, Don Juan doesn't like this ally.
He respects the sheer force of it, but he warns that she is a possessive slave maker. The danger of the devil's weed is that it gives men a taste of ultimate power before their psychological character is ready to wield it.
Oh.
It makes a sorcerer domineering, erratic, and ultimately weak in the middle of their own physical strength, because power without discipline always corrupts.
And the sorcery required just to prepare it is grueling. I mean, it involves mashing the toxic root, mixing it with wild boar lard, and then performing this incredibly disturbing lizard sorcery.
Yes, the lizard sorcery.
Castaneda has to go into the desert and catch 2 specific lizards. Using agave fibers and a cactus thorn, he has to sew the mouth of one lizard shut and sew the eyelids of the other lizard shut.
The psychological weight of this ritual is exactly what makes it function. From an outside perspective, yes, it sounds horrific, but internally, it operates on strict logic.
How so?
Well, the lizard with the sewn mouth goes out into the desert to gather hidden information. Its mouth is sewn so it won't be distracted or stop to chat with strangers.
Oh, wow.
And the lizard with the sewn eyes stays against the sorcerer's shoulder to whisper what the first lizard is seeing. It is a highly specific divination technique.
But beyond the mythology, think about what this does to a person's brain. You spend hours in the blistering heat performing a hyper-focused, tedious, physically exhausting ritual.
You're completely drained.
By the time you finish, your brain is practically in a trance state. You have induced extreme psychological susceptibility before the psychoactive compounds even touch your skin.
And that is the brilliance of the system. The ritual exhausts the logical mind. So when Castaneda finally rubs the devil's weed paste onto his temples and legs, the chemical properties of the datura meet a perfectly primed consciousness.
Right.
And the result is that he experiences physical flight.
He describes soaring through the night sky, feeling the wind, seeing the dark, heavy mass of the mountains rushing past him below.
Yes.
And this is where my modern mind just hits a brick wall. Because I want to know, did his physical body, his literal mass, displace air and hover over the ground? Or was he just lying in the bushes hallucinating?
Castaneda demands that exact answer from Don Juan. He essentially asks, if my friends from UCLA were standing there with a camera, would they capture me flying?
Yes. What does Don Juan say?
Don Juan executes what we can call a complete epistemological pivot. He entirely changes the definition of what constitutes a fact. He tells him, birds fly like birds, and a man who has taken the weed flies as such.
Oh my gosh, that is the most infuriating answer for a scientist.
It is. But Don Juan would laugh at the desire for objective measurement. For him, Western physics is irrelevant. The pivot is about utility.
Right.
If you take the ally, and the ally allows your consciousness to travel 1,000 miles, locate an enemy, and strike them, then you flew. The mechanism, whether your physical body hovered or your mind projected itself, it simply does not matter. The tangible result is real.
It's a complete rejection of physical matter as the only valid metric of truth.
Completely.
And if flying on datura sounds intense, it is nothing compared to Don Juan's preferred ally, the little smoke.
Oh, the little smoke, derived from psilocybe mushrooms. If the devil's weed is about blunt physical force and aggression, the little smoke is about absolute seeing and divination.
And the prep is crazy.
It requires immense patience. It takes a full year just to create the dust. The mushrooms are sealed in a gourd, undergoing a slow, meticulous transformation.
And when Castaneda finally smokes this dust from Don Juan's sacred pipe, the trip is utterly terrifying. He experiences total ego death.
Absolute dissolution.
He feels his physical flesh literally melting off his skull. He phases through the solid wooden poles of the house. He is absorbed into the adobe walls. He loses his physical body entirely, becoming nothing but pure, untethered awareness floating in the air.
Because the ally is explicitly designed to remove physical and psychological boundaries, so consciousness can perceive reality without the filter of the human ego.
Which actually ties directly into modern concepts of neuroplasticity.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We know today that deeply ingrained habits and ways of seeing the world carve deep grooves in our brains. Extreme experiences like the ego death Castaneda goes through essentially flatten those grooves.
Right.
You have to entirely lose your rigid sense of self to absorb a completely alien paradigm. But the danger is obvious. I mean, wielding reality-bending power, melting through walls, losing your tether to gravity and logic, that would drive a normal person completely insane.
It would shatter them. The only way a sorcerer survives this psychological pressure cooker is by walking what Don Juan calls a path with a heart,
Right.
and by systematically defeating the 4 natural enemies of a man of knowledge.
This is the philosophical core of our entire deep dive today.
Right.
Because becoming a man of knowledge isn't a permanent title. You don't get a certificate to hang in your office.
Right. No graduation.
It is a fleeting, transient state achieved only by confronting 4 sequential, relentless psychological traps.
Exactly. And the very first trap is fear.
Fear.
Because when you start to learn anything truly profound, it is never what you expect. The reality of the unknown is terrifying, just as Castaneda experienced when his face felt like it was melting.
Right.
The fear mounts mercilessly with every step. And if you run away, if you let your nervous system yield to that panic, you are defeated. You will simply remain a frightened, harmless person.
So the only way out is through. You have to be fully terrified, acknowledge the panic, and take the next step anyway. You keep walking into the darkness until suddenly the fear retreats.
Yeah.
But the moment you beat fear, you instantly run into the second enemy, clarity. Now, wait, stop right there. You're saying clarity is a bad thing. I thought the entire goal of learning a new subject was to achieve clarity.
It sounds like a paradox, I know. But Don Juan is describing a known psychological phenomenon, what we might call cognitive closure, or even the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Oh, sure.
Once you vanquish fear, your mind feels incredibly sharp. You feel like you finally understand the system, but that sudden clarity blinds you.
Wow.
It breeds arrogance. You stop questioning. You start rushing into complex situations because you assume you have it all figured out.
You become that person who listens to one deep dive on a complex geopolitical issue and suddenly thinks they're the world's foremost expert.
Yes, exactly. And if you act on that arrogant clarity, you make fatal mistakes. To defeat this enemy, you have to defy your own confidence.
Okay.
You have to recognize that your clarity is just a tiny point of light, not the whole picture. You must wait patiently, measure carefully, and use your clarity only to see, never to assume you are invincible.
And if you manage to humble yourself, if you beat the paralysis of fear and the blinding arrogance of clarity, you arrive at the third enemy. And Don Juan considers this the most insidious trap of all power.
Power is deeply corrupting because when you possess clarity and strength, you truly become formidable. You command your allies, you make the rules, and you bend situations to your will.
Right.
But if you yield to it, you don't necessarily lose the power itself, but you lose your humanity. You become cruel, capricious, and dictatorial, burdened by an authority you cannot internally manage.
So how do you defeat it? You defeat it by realizing the power never actually belonged to you in the first place. You have to keep yourself strictly in line, handling everything you've learned with extreme care and fidelity. It requires supreme self-control.
It really does.
And if you somehow survive the seduction of power, you face the final enemy.
Old age. This is the cruelest enemy because it is the only one you cannot permanently defeat. It is the inevitable entropy of life.
It's the unyielding desire to simply rest, to forget the struggle. I mean, you've fought through the terror of the unknown, you've humbled your own arrogant clarity, you've controlled the corruption of immense power, and now you are just exhausted.
You're just done.
Yeah, you want to lie down and let the world spin without you.
And if you give in to that deep existential tiredness, the enemy cuts you down into a feeble creature. But if you can slaw off that exhaustion, if you can fight off the desire to retreat even for a brief moment to engage with the world one last time, then in that single shining instant, you are truly a man of knowledge.
Which brings us to the ultimate metric for navigating this brutal journey. Because why subject yourself to all of this? Don Juan tells Castaneda to ask one simple question of any path he chooses to take. Does this path have a heart?
Does it have a heart?
Since all paths ultimately lead nowhere, I mean, we all end up in the exact same ground, the destination is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the journey itself. Does the path make for a joyful journey that makes you strong? Or does it make you curse your life?
It strips away all external ambition, all the societal markers of success, and leaves only the internal quality of your daily experience.
And that is exactly why the sources you sent over matter so much to you, the listener, right now.
Yeah.
You do not have to be chewing peyote in the Sonoran Desert to face these exact same enemies.
Definitely not.
Whether you are prepping for a high-stakes boardroom meeting, studying an overwhelming new field of science, or just trying to survive the modern barrage of information overload, Don Juan's framework perfectly applies.
We all battle the paralyzing fear of failure when we launch a new project.
Right.
We all fall prey to the blinding arrogance of sudden clarity when we memorize a few buzzwords. We all face the corrupting temptation of power when we finally get that promotion.
Yeah.
And eventually we all face the deep exhaustion of age and the temptation to just stop trying to understand a changing world.
It's a map for the lifelong learner. It warns you of the psychological traps waiting for you on your own path.
But bringing this all back to where we started, you know, that confident academic taking notes on his clipboard?
The guy reeling on the porch.
Right. There is one final lingering question we have to leave you with.
Okay, what is it?
Throughout this deep dive, it is very easy to treat Castaneda's experiences merely as the chemical effects of hallucinogenic plants on a primate brain.
Gotcha.
But look at the sheer complexity of what he experienced. A human mind generated an entirely coherent, external, independent reality.
Wow. Yeah.
He interacted with an entity that taught him long-forgotten Spanish songs, an entity that revealed the deepest, most hidden emotional truths of his own childhood. If the human brain is genuinely capable of constructing a reality that dense, that physically real, and that profoundly insightful, then what exactly is the ordinary reality we accept every single day?
That is a wild thought. Are we actually seeing the world as it truly is? Or are we just walking around in a shared hallucination we've all been conditioned to accept?
Is your spreadsheet the fundamental truth of the universe, or is it just the illusion you feel most comfortable with?